Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's so great to talk about this project. This is a new project for me and for our research team, and it's wonderful to have a chance to talk about it with you all and get some ideas about different ways we can think about some of this data. We have an enormous amount of data, and I'm going to take a first cut at looking at it and thinking about it with you all today, but I hope as we move forward, you might be interested in talking to me about this project. Happy New Year as well, and thank you all for coming. I know this is a crazy week. So the project I'm going to talk about today is it's some preliminary results of a cross-site comparative urban ecological research project that I'm involved with. The lead PI of the whole project is Peter Groffman at the Carey Institute. That's why I underlined his name there. Peter's done a really exceptional job of corralling about 30 people, PIs, involved in this project. This project is funded through the NSF Microsystems Biology funding. I also listed all the other lead PIs on this project and their affiliations. This project's also been supported by FCE. This project intersects with some work that we started in FCE 2, trying to understand the ways in which urban, rural, and less developed landscapes like the Everglades interact, and some work that my graduate student Rebecca Garville did last year. I have 14 slides. You'll be able to see the numbers on the bottom if you're like me as you watch people give talks, even if they're fascinating, as this one will be. I start to be like, lady, when's it going to go? So keep up with those slides that way. So increasingly, as you all know, living here in Miami, the human experience is really becoming an urban experience. And trends suggest worldwide, of course, that urbanization is going to continue to transform the relations of people, other species, economic, political, and biophysical processes. In other words, the world that is emergent is certainly an urban world. Of course, I don't need to tell us that as we drive here each day through that urban world. But still, there are lots of assumptions that we have about the urban world that really remain untested. And some of these assumptions about urbanization is that urbanization is a process of social and ecological homogenization. And this is the key thing I'm going to be talking about today, and that's the key goal of our project, is to try to understand that. So as cities grow in size over the past 100 years, they've really challenged our ideas about, our kind of traditional ideas about urban space and cities. You know, traditionally when we think about sort of classic 19th century cities, they have these tight urban cores that are residential that tend to be ringed by kind of more industrial and service areas that then they kind of grow out into sort of agricultural and rural spaces. That's certainly not the case anymore with cities. Nowadays we see in cities all over the country, Baltimore is a great example of that, where urban cores have become increasingly depopulated. Places in Baltimore, for instance, there's blocks upon blocks upon blocks where no one lives anymore. And the services and the type of infrastructure that used to be associated with cities are now in the rural areas and in the suburban areas, and this is suburbanization. So cities really in the last 50 years have really changed, or what we think of as urban life. You know, tellingly, in 2010, there was an analysis of census data that came out in 2010 by the urban sociologist Robert Lang, and this really confirms the fact that urbanization now is really suburbanization. The growth of cities is really uneven in the post-recession economy, but the growth that is occurring is suburban. So it's important for us to think about the suburbs because literally they are now the dominant American cultural landscape. They're the place where most of us live and certainly the place where most of us vote. And I like to think about this. I think maybe it's this very intimacy we tend to have with the suburban that makes most of us anxious. Certainly we all have kind of widespread anxieties about suburbia. Suburban life is almost a metaphor, right, for social conformity, homogenization, and all those kind of anxieties. From the surface, as this picture here shows, these anxieties about homogenization seem rooted in reality. These are two pictures. One of them is Phoenix, and one of them is a neighborhood in Boston, and it's quite difficult to tell which one is which from on top, right? They have very similar structural forms. We could put Miami there too, right?
That's Phoenix on the right, though, isn't it?
Do you want me to just give it away? Why do you think it's Phoenix?
Because there's less grass.
It's the swimming pools too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also on a rectangular grid, which Boston was created before the grid was installed.
Although this on the left, I bet, is not old Boston. I think that's probably suburbs. Definitely one of the most documented outcomes of suburbanization and urbanization in the ecological literature has certainly been the replacement of natural habitats by turf grass yards, popular plant species, and impervious surfaces, and there's a big literature about that. Turf grass alone now covers 10 to 16 million hectares in the United States, which makes it the nation's second largest irrigated crop next to corn.